podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I see a few people have started to join. Hi, David. Hi, Tamara. Hi, Annalie. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Just waiting on a few more here. Couple more coming in.
Welcome, everyone.
Just give everyone a couple minutes to join us.
If everyone wants to write where they're coming from in the comment section, we can always kick off with that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I personally am coming to you live from Manchester, New Hampshire, where it's very cold.
I'm coming from Malden, Massachusetts, where it's also cold. Feel free to write in the comment box where you're coming from. Oh, we've got a Florida attendant. We're very jealous.
Yeah, what part?
We've got another Manchester family. Detroit area, cold as well. All right, well, we're all feeling the same pain except for Annalie. Okay. I think we're just about ready to start here. Thank you for joining us today for a little lunch and learn. And we are going to begin now. So welcome to our webinar where we're going to be talking about the demise of open rates and gauging performance in the area of increased privacy protection.
So my name is Shannon Batula. I'm a digital marketing analyst here at WeDo. I'll be one of your hosts today.
I am Raquel Beltran, digital marketing specialist, and we will be talking you through some email stuff.
All right, so what are you going to learn today? So we're going to start off today's webinar by introducing you to Apple's latest iOS 15 update. So along with that came the privacy protection policy. We're going to talk a little bit about how that's going to affect us all as marketers. From there, we're going to be discussing the tools that you all can use moving forward to best measure your email performance. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with some suggestions on how you can take your emails to the next level.
So let's talk a little bit about what's new with iOS 15. This is Apple's latest software release, and with that release came the privacy protection policy, which basically allowed Apple users to opt in or out of data tracking in the Mail app, which is really affecting our ability as marketers or email senders to collect information about users. Let's talk a bit about what that means for us. So if they opt in to these added protection, that Apple automatically shows them as opens, therefore it makes our data unreliable. If it's not reliable, it really can't play a role in making informed marketing decisions. So what it's going to do is if they've opted into this privacy protection, it's going to mask their location. It's going to hide from us if they've forwarded our emails. It's going to hide what kind of device information they're using. It's going to disrupt live content. And then lastly, it's going to obscure those open times because we're going to be seeing them all marked as opens. So gone are those days of us using open-based marketing tactics such as non-open or re-engagement campaigns. Up until this point, as you know, one of the key metrics that most of us use to measure an email success is how many people open the email, so open rates. And while we know that open rates aren't the end-all be-all for email success, the iOS 15 privacy feature is really going to have to force us to rethink email performance. So when an open rate is high, it hinted that our subject line did a really good job pulling readers in. You're sending emails at the most engaging time of the day is also something that it would tell us. It also would tell us that maybe like our subscribers were eagerly awaiting our content in their inbox. Versus when it was low, we could identify that maybe our email subscribers may have not been reading our content, or we didn't use the right subject line, we didn't send at the right time. But now the way email marketers leverage open rates is going to cause us to really have to change some things.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the adoption rate of past iOS software updates. So when iOS 14.5 was released in early April of 2021, it was actually one of Apple's first privacy protection policies, or introduced one of its first privacy protection policies, which was called App Tracking Transparency. This policy required that all iPhone, iPad, and Apple TV apps actually request users' permission to continue to track their activity for data collection and ad targeting purposes. Originally, experts had predicted that there would be a more relaxed response from users, with approximately 40% of all users that were going to continue to allow these apps to track their data. Fast forward to 2021, we know that this is not the case. Users are far more protective of their data. So we're left with only 18% of all users allowing those apps to continue tracking the data. So let's fast forward now to the iOS 15 release. What does the 14.5 release tell us about this newest and latest release? So knowing what they know now regarding the adoption rate of the privacy protection policy in the iOS 14.5 update, experts predicted that the adoption rate would be about the same 18% of all users that would continue to allow apps to track their data. So this leaves us as marketers with a whopping 82% of all Apple users that we're no longer going to be able to accurately track. Kind of sucks. What we do with the good news, I guess I'll say, is that as with any new operating system update, the rate at which users are upgrading their current device can take months. So it's actually this transition from the 14.5 to the iOS 15 has had one of the slowest adoption rates that Apple has ever seen. So what does this mean for us as marketers? This provides us with the extra time, not a lot, but some extra time, to pivot how we measure our current email performance and the tactics that go along with that. So now that we have a bit of time to pivot, what are we going to do to expand these measuring tactics? In 2021, Litmus conducted research involving about 3 billion email opens from January to March. They actually found that Apple Mail was far and away the most popular email client. Not shocking to, I imagine, most of us. It actually holds almost 40% of the total email client market share. So that's a large percentage of total market share that are going to be Apple users, Apple Mail users specifically. So this just further supports the point that us as marketers, we need to pivot the way that we're measuring our email performance to ensure that we're really reviewing accurate data. So what do? How do we change the way that we're measuring the success of our emails? The biggest change, and I'll say this 3 times for emphasis, is always in the form of engagement. So we're going to be focusing all of our data on user engagement metrics, and ultimately it's going to be the key to our success. It's really the only thing that we can really hold on to with the loss of some of these open rates. So we're going to run through some of the best engagement measuring tactics with you today that we have found work best in our instance. So UTM tracking, analytics, and also the direct connection with our e-commerce purchases.
Let's start with UTM tracking. So a little bit about what is it? It's an UTM parameter that tags that you have created an extra form of analytics tracking that you add to your URL. So it's quite hard to tell if your email strategy is working if you can't tell who's opening your email and where they're coming from. And that's where this UTM tracking can really help. UTM stands for Urchin Traffic Monitors. And please write in the comments if you knew that that's what it stood for. When someone clicks on a URL with a UTM parameter, those tags are sent back to your Google Analytics for tracking. Google Analytics, while it's a great tool, can sometimes put people in the wrong buckets of traffic. So this URL tracking is super important to be able to really drive people and for you to be able to identify that those people came from that specific place. And they're basically just short codes that you add to the end of a URL that helps us accurately track and basically forces Google to record them correctly. And it really allows you to use this to track the success of your campaign. You can see here we have at the bottom of our slide a URL where the beginning part of the URL is blue, the UTM source is the black. So whenever you click on an ad on Facebook or an ad or a call to action on an email and you see UTM, there's a really smart marketer behind that tracking exactly where they want you to go, see where you're coming from. And we've also included this tool here in the top corner so you guys can use it as well if you're looking to add this into your marketing strategies. Up next, now that we're tracking them with our UTM codes, we need to talk about analytics. So how do we use those UTM codes and what is it going to show us that's so far beyond open rates? Now that we can't rely on open rates, you're actually going to be able to learn how your customers are interacting with your campaign with these UTM codes. So the biggest piece of advice for us is for you to focus on the behavior. What will analytics really tell you? So it will show you how many new users you obtain for each new campaign, how much time users are spending on your website, how many pages they viewed during their visits, and the percentage of conversions that met the goal that you've originally set. So these metrics will quickly help you identify the success of any URL you track in your email. Just to focus on the top four here. So all the metrics you can find in analytics are important, but some of these can really help determine the success of your email. And we really recommend these big four. There's a lot of information in analytics. It's a lot to get lost in. So first is users, the next is sessions, then bounce rate and session durations. Those are our big recommended four. So you've selected a specific call to action that leads people to a certain page on your site, and whether it's a blog or a form or even just informational content, here's how these specific metrics are going to help you see if your email helped in driving people to your site or keeping them there and really engaging with your product or service. For users, the metrics that it lets you see is how many people came from your emails. So your emails could have drove 6,500 people. How many of them came back and looked at your URL is what session stands for. So if 6.5K came to your page and there were 9K sessions, then that is an added amount of people that came back to look at your website. Those are some really intentional users, right? So if the bounce rate is low next up, it indicates that a user visited more than one page on your website before leaving, and they have a higher level of interest in your product or service. And last but not least, the session duration allows you to identify how long someone stayed on your URL. The longer they stay, the more interest. So you can really tell if your URL works for more reasons than just an open rate, or if your email was successful, by looking at some of these stats. Looking at these numbers will tell you whether the creative or the content that you use in your email worked, depending on your metrics, of course. So we also want to bring back to why are you able to see this information? It's because you've used your UTM codes to track and tell analytics to look at those specific codes.
All right, so shifting over into the e-commerce tracking and the connection that that has with our analytics accounts. So while we know that this iOS 15 protection update does inhibit us as marketers from really accurately determining if our Apple audience is engaging with our emails, it doesn't impact the data, as we've kind of already talked about, that we collect once a user reaches our website, our landing page, whatever it may be, making it that much more important for us to utilize the firsthand data that our websites provide us, just to make sure that we are accurately reaching the right people at the right time with the right message with our email efforts. So this update is going to force us to shift our mindsets from tracking those original traditional vanity metrics like opens and clicks to those that are much more outcome focused and outcome based. So actual purchases made on your website. Great. So keeping this in mind, leveraging your Google Analytics to track any and all of your e-commerce activity provides you with an awesome opportunity for understanding what's working well, what's eliciting those conversions, and what communications are really not hitting the mark. So understanding that user behavior of your audience once they reach the website is really going to help you to isolate the areas that you need to focus the most on. So as you can see in the graphic on the right, that is actually Google Analytics funnel visualization tool. And it shows you in this example here that you had a little bit over 22,000 people enter the cart on your website, but you had almost 15,000 drop off when they reached the billing and shipping page. So there's some indications that, and inferences that we can make that perhaps your shipping costs are a bit too high in this instance. Maybe your users are out of your shipping range. It's all things to think about, and it's all things that the data is going to help us and help to guide us into the right direction for how we speak with our consumers and how we reach them via email. So that's why metrics like abandoned cart, bounce rate, the average session duration, all those ones that Raquel mentioned earlier, they're all 8 great indicators of a user's intent when they reach your site, not only their behavior. Okay, so now that we've discussed other ways that you can measure your email performance, let's dive into the ways that you can also improve it. So we talked about, the ways that it's best measured now that we're losing our opens. Let's talk about other ways to improve it. So ensuring that email has strong ways of eliciting engagement. I go back to that word engagement again. Raquel mentioned it as behavior. Those are all really great ways and great areas to focus on. We suggest using things such as surveys and polls, identifying the optimal frequency and cadence for your specific set of users, as well as including various marketing mediums to best communicate with your audience. Anything that's going to elicit the engagement that you're looking for. All right, so let's start with surveys and polls. So as I mentioned previously, focusing on user engagement metrics, I said it again, engagement, it's going to be the key to your email success. So utilizing tools that encourage this direct engagement are a great way to collect these metrics. Surveys and polls offer you real-time feedback and the opportunity to really dig deep into who your audience is and what they value most. Not only do they help to segment your users based on unique preferences, they also help in collecting that feedback, and they provide validation for your new content ideas that you might have been testing out.
Now let's talk a little bit about frequency. So the frequency in which you send your emails can really help educate your consumer. It can help increase awareness, and it helps relationship build. So the single most important reason to talk to your customers on a more consistent basis is to build relationships. And the goal of sending emails to a consumer is to secure a loyal audience. And that really only happens if the relationship is forming is beneficial for the both of you. And, the right frequency is an important thing to figure out. It's a scary thing to try to figure out, but if you email them too much, you lose their interest. You don't email them enough, you actually, again, lose their interest. If you find that right cadence, though, it's like hitting an email goldmine. In the past, a lot of people have said that finding the right cadence for more opens is what we need to focus on. What we're finding now with these new privacy protections is that's not what we need to be looking at. We're looking at finding the right cadence for the most engagement with our email. So are they engaging with our service and products? Are we getting more conversions? That's the frequency and cadence that you're looking for. You don't just send emails to send emails. Your content should be valuable both for you and for your customer. The benefit needs to be working both ways. Now let's talk about the right frequency. The $1,000,000 question. So figuring out how often to email your consumers is tricky. Emailing often is tempting because, of course, it could turn into sales for us, but it could also mean they just tune you out entirely, or worse, they unsubscribe or mark you as spam. And the reality is, we all have different preferences when it comes to how many emails we get. And the perfect email frequency doesn't necessarily exist, but there have been some studies done on customers' desired frequency. As you can see, I mean, this is kind of vague, but at least they want one monthly email. 80% of people want that. And less than 10% want to be emailed yearly. So we've got to find a sweet spot in between there. Send too few emails and you can miss opportunities to sell. You can, even if they aren't opening them, just being in their inbox is a way to stay top of mind. So you send too few, you aren't top of mind for them. Inconsistency with them can ring alarm bells. They sign up for a reason. It's important you don't forget to talk to them. If you send too many, people only have time for so many emails, so it's going to mean less engagement for you. If they opt out, you lose your chance to market to them, so more customers may unsubscribe. And the worst is that if they are unsubscribing or marking you as spam, it's damaging your sender reputation. The key is to make the sends really relevant. So when you can't do that, when you're just sending the email without thought to content or to meet a schedule, that's when the value proposition for your audience begins to really drop off. And that's when you lose leverage. So when we were talking about that range of 80 to 10%, we want to also give you some tips as to finding your right percentage of frequency and cadence. So here's a tip from us. We suggest, and something that we've done that works really well for our email marketing campaigns, we suggest that you create a focus group that keeps your current frequency. So how often you're currently sending your emails. Then you select a different group and send more frequently. Then with the third one, you send less frequently. And then you just watch to see how your engagement rates change over a month. Monitor metrics like unsubscribes, complaints, clicks, conversions. And the biggest thing here is to trust the data. Let the data tell you what frequency works right for your subscribers. Your subscribers are going to tell you what works right for them. Each one of our audiences are unique. Our audience is going to be different than your audience, so you really have to curtail their specific experience very intentionally.
Right. So now that we've talked about frequency, we've talked about polls and surveys, another thing that we want to talk about is the inclusion of omni-channel marketing within your strategy, within your overall marketing strategy. So as many of you already know, there are many other ways of reaching our consumers with brand messaging aside from email. So even though email remains one of the most cost-effective ways, it really only works, and it works best when incorporated into this omni-channel strategy. So inclusion of other marketing channels such as social, digital, and direct mail in your plan is going to ensure that you're meeting your consumers not only where they are, but also learn what mediums they respond to best. So the more learnings made about how your consumers engage with you, the better. Conversions are really unlikely to happen from a single form of outreach, so it's really important to customize your communications specifically to your audience. So let's run through a little exercise of how a successful omni-channel strategy works. So you've officially run out of dog food for your dog. You pick up your phone to order some online. You Google Science Diet because that's the food that your dog likes, and you start just looking at available products in your area. During your search, you're served a display ad from Chewy with a 25% off discount, and you think, what a deal, the food's expensive. So you head over to the Chewy website, you make your purchase, close your computer, and you go on about your day. A few days later, you receive a follow-up email from Chewy introducing you to their auto ship feature, which ships your monthly supply of dog food to you automatically, no thought behind it. You click through to the website and you read a bit about how it works, but you're not really quite ready to commit to the cost yet. So a day later, you're served in another ad that offers you 30% off your first auto ship order. Again, you click through, but you're not fully convinced to sign up yet. A week later, you receive a $20 off coupon in the mail for the auto ship service, and you set it aside with all of your other mail. And within a few days, you receive a follow-up email reminding you to take advantage of the original 30% off offer, and you finally commit to the auto ship subscription. So let's kind of think through the journey that you just went through with digital mail, email, direct mail, digital ads, direct mail, and email. And let's compare that with one that may have just had a single touch point. Perhaps maybe a follow-up email introducing you to Chewy's auto ship service. Do you really think the chances of upselling to the auto ship subscription are really even an option at that point? Probably not. You've not really thought about it much. You got one follow-up email, it kind of sparked your mind, but the minute you closed your email down, you're not thinking about it again. This is why it's so important to maintain not only the right frequency that Raquel mentioned earlier, but also the diversity of your touch points. We all know that we can get inundated with lots and lots of emails daily. So it's really important to make yourself stand out by making these unique touch points and using unique mediums to do so. So ultimately, communicating with your consumers in these different mediums over an extended period of time is going to offer you with so many more opportunities, offer your consumers so many more opportunities to act, and therefore just maximizes your chance of converting them, whether it be a single purchase or in this instance, a longer, more long-term subscription model purchase, which is even better. So let's kind of talk through things about, that we've discussed so far. So while the iOS 15 privacy protection update does kind of throw a wrench in the email marketing plans for all of us as marketers everywhere, there are great and honestly even better ways of measuring email performance moving forward. We're not thinking about the vanity metrics anymore, the opens and the clicks, because ultimately they are not what's telling us is working and what's not. They have a small indication, but ultimately it's going to be that user behavior and the user engagement beyond the email that we really want to focus on. So measuring the effectiveness of your email performance is really no longer reliant on those areas. So it forces us all as marketers to dig way deeper and rely more on the outcome-focused metrics, like the user behavior and the site data that we all have access to. As we all know, our work can always be improved. So the utilization of things such as surveys within your emails, frequency of your email sends, and the inclusion of omni-channel strategies are definitely sure to amplify your email performance long-term.
At the end of the day, what we really want to drive home here is that taking the guesswork and assumptions out of who you think your consumers are and using the data that's already at your fingertips will be the ultimate evolution to your email marketing campaigns. And we want you to remember to let the data lead the way. Thank you so much for watching. We would love to take some time to take questions. Haley, our moderator, will be using this time to let us know what you guys are wondering about or any comments you made.
All right, well, you guys have come up with any questions you may have. I'm gonna read off the ones that have already come through to us. The first one is, what is the best day and time to send emails?
Great question. So typically you can send an email at any time, any day, but research has shown that the best 2 days of the week to send emails are Tuesdays and Thursdays. As far as timing goes, it's usually when someone has they've taken the time to either go through their work email, they're wrapping up their day. So the times that you want to aim for are between 10 and noon and 3 and 5 on those days. If you think about it, the first moment that you walk in the door to your office, maybe it's just at your home office, you're usually really busy. So Once someone has gone through all of their emails and, taken care of what they need to, they have a little bit of downtime. Now they're able to, spend the time to engage with your email communication.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Our next question is, what are some ways you A and B test your campaigns?
Okay, well, this is a fun one. We have various clients that we help with email. And we test everything from subject lines to template layouts. We test call to actions. And, there's a lot of variables that you can test in an email. And my biggest tip for you is try testing one at a time, because if you're testing two things at once, it's very hard to tell which one has made that change in clicks or engagement. So that would be kind of some ways we A/B test.
Did we lose her?
Did you guys hear me? Were you guys able to hear me?
You cut out a little bit at the end there.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was just saying that, when there's a lot of variables that you're testing with, like subject lines or call to actions, try to test one variable at a time, because it's much easier to identify exactly what worked and what didn't.
Thanks, Raquel. The next question we have is, should I ever resend an email?
Oh, this is an interesting one. So I would say, yeah. Obviously, keep in mind the frequency that you're sending a follow-up email or a repeat email. Typically, what we like to do, and again, we were always kind of relying on the open rates before, where it's like they weren't previously engaged. Let's send them the same email, but change up the subject line. But if you really want to drive your point home, there's no problem with sending the same email, maybe change up the subject line, maybe add a few new calls to action to the copy. You have to tweak it slightly. To Raquel's point earlier, frequency is going to be really important, but there is kind of like a sweet spot. You don't want to overdo it and you don't want to underdo it. So really kind of testing to find where that lies is really important. We've done a few where we've sent follow-up emails that had just slight content tweaks, and they ended up performing really well. We've also done, the opposite, where we've sent repeats and they didn't perform well. So it's really just kind of observing what's working best for your audience.
All right, thank you, Shannon. And then we also had two other questions come in just now. The first one is from Anna Lee, and she said, due to the new iOS, is there any other way to track engagement besides offering a survey or poll in an email campaign using a CMS?
Any other new?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, so
go for it, Shannon.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. So while opens are still going to kind of be up in the air and not fully reliable, because Apple is defaulting pretty much everyone that opts in as an open, clicks are still going to be there. They're still going to be a great way of measuring the actual engagement within the email. That being said, the actual engagement within the email can also be tracked further once someone moves out of the email, because ultimately you don't want someone just relying on your email content to be the end all be all for your sales process. You want to send them somewhere else so that they can learn more. They have further ways to engage with you. So sending them to a landing page, for instance, that allows them to do a live demo, request, a contact information for maybe a representative on your team. You want to get them to that next step, which is why we have such a heavy up focus on the Google Analytics side. Again, clicks within your emails are still going to be reliable for the actual in-email, engagement. But ultimately, it's really, you want to pull them out of that email experience and bring them somewhere else. And that other location is really where you want to nail down their behavior, which is why we just go right back to that Google Analytics. And then I think that, Raquel, I don't know if you had anything to add.
Yeah, I think Shannon covered most of it, but that UTM tracking will allow you to see engagement for specific URLs in your email. So watch those behaviors, see how long they're staying on your site after you send them somewhere from that specific link. Clicks and some of that analytics work will allow you to see how your email is performing and specific pieces within your email, how that performed, which is even more important, right?
Okay, thank you both. We also have one more question from Judith, and she asked, what is an acceptable bounce rate?
So
You want me to take this one? You want to take this one?
I would say you're going to want to keep your bounce rate between 56 and 70%, like around that 50 to 70 mark. Anything higher than 70, something's off. They're not relating to that specific content. We want to obviously stay lower than 50. Like if you have a 20 to 30% bounce rate, you're doing good. But anything that's moving up higher, like 60, 70, 80, you should take a look at what's happening within your website. Is it taking too long to load? Are people just coming off because they're waiting forever to open the page? Is there not the right information? Maybe you didn't send them to the right place. I would take a look at those numbers to be able to identify what the right bounce rate is for you. An optimal bounce rate is that 26 to 40, but I would start being a little bit concerned if anything starts to go up higher than that 70 number.
One thing just really quick to add on, Raquel, something important to keep in mind is if you're seeing that all of your ads are, for instance, are going to a landing page and you've got 100% bounce, it could also mean that maybe you don't have many other ways for people to click off of that page. If you just have a single landing page, but you haven't hyperlinked the logo on the landing page with your home page of your actual website, the person doesn't really have anywhere to go but fill out the form. So it's always really nice to incorporate a couple of different calls to action on your single landing page to, further drive that bounce rate down. That's really only going to come into play if you see that users are spending a decent amount of time on the page. That there's obviously interest and intent behind their search, but they're just not finding what they want. They're not getting what they need. So perhaps sending them to some place that maybe they are finding the details that they're looking for is always a great option. But yeah, what Raquel said is spot on.
Also, I would suggest we are really close to our work. So where we're sending people, in our head, we're like, that's exactly where they need to be. But we're so close to it, we're seeing it every day. It makes sense to us. But it's important to realize, take yourself out of that shoe and turn yourself into put your consumer hat on, and then see, if I were to land on this page, like how likely am I to actually fill out this information or complete this purchase from this exact click? Like, do I need a little bit more information first? Do I need a couple more places, to Shannon's point, to like click through or complete something? I think those are some things to consider. So you have to take your marketer hat on and your email marketing hat off and put on your consumer hat sometimes and kind of switch your perspective.
All right. We actually have one more question that came through, and that is, what is the average for sessions and session duration that you would recommend?
This one really is going to fluctuate based on the content that you have on your landing page. Session duration, think about how long it would take you to read the content on your page. If you've got a headline and a couple sentences, likely your session duration is going to be pretty low. It's going to take me about 30 seconds to sift through this information. If I at that point go forward and fill out a form, might take me a couple extra seconds to get that form filled out. That is really going to be dependent on what the content is on the page. Obviously, you want those numbers to be high. You want session duration to be high, that they've really committed the time to digesting the information that you're putting on your page. But it's not going to make sense if your page doesn't have the amount of content for them to fully digest in 5 minutes. The other one was pages per session. You obviously want pages per session to be high if, like I mentioned earlier, you're out linking to other pages on your website or other resources, another form on another page. Because what that's going to show to you is that they are actively looking for more and more information from you. There's obviously shown intent behind their search. So there really is no like right or wrong number. You want, I mean, typically if I'm just thinking in my mind, I want that pages per session to be higher than 1. 1 is still great because at least they are staying on the page that you've sent them to. Session duration again is going to be determined by the content that you have on those landing pages. But obviously you don't want a 5-second session duration. They've clearly landed, loaded the page, and bounced off. So you want those to be higher. You want those to be, I mean, a minute is great. That's sometimes a little bit overkill, but anything over like 40 seconds shows some level of intent. Just think in your minds, like, how long would it take me to read this content, to look at the imagery, maybe there's some graphs. How long would it take me as a consumer to digest this information and determine my next steps?
There's also some studies that have been done at how load time can really affect your bottom line. And anything that takes longer than 3 seconds to load has a 40% chance of being abandoned. So attention spans are low. The things that have to be loading quickly need to be loading quickly. If somebody's trying to check out, you need to make sure that that's being optimally loaded. Again, that for some reason 2 is that sweet spot, 20 seconds to 40 seconds on bounce rate, around 1 to 2 minutes for session duration. 2 pages per session is a great space to be at. You have to, again, consumer hat, like how long would you realistically spend on a site that you're genuinely interested in or piqued interest?
All right, thank you both. That wraps up our questions, unless any other come through last minute. But thank you both. You did a great job.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. And here at we have clients from all different industries, and we try to help them with different channel strategies and brainstorming things that work really well for them. So email is one of our fortes. If you have any questions at all after this webinar, you're welcome to email it to us, chat it to us. We're also both on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect with us there. We look forward to hearing from you, and keep an eye out for our future webinars. We are hosting webinars once a quarter, so we hope to see familiar names in our next one.
Hold on, Raquel and Shannon. It looks like we have one more question real quick.
Sure.
So the question is, the surveys polls, do you suggest a link to them on embedded in the email?
I think it's better for you to embed them in your emails because, again, you decrease the chance of somebody bouncing off. So you could send them to a link and somebody could instantly bounce off. They might be like, I'm not doing all of this. Versus on your email, you already have them there. So why not position it to them there? Again, though, we're going to bring it back to our main point is trust the data, test it. See what works. See if it worked better in your email. See if it worked better when you linked it. And, split up your groups. Send it to one specific group a certain way and then a different group. Did people click more in that? Did you have higher session durations on one group versus the other? And then now you know whether your surveys and polls work better within the email or in a link. But that would be kind of how I would attack sort of a scenario like that.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest starting with the embed, just because as humans we're like naturally, I don't want to say lazy, but we want to feel satisfied as quickly as possible. So a one click, meaning I filled out my poll by clicking once, great, I'm done. Sometimes that additional click and go, now you've got to load up a landing page. Sometimes it just ends up, like to Raquel's point, they're not even going to wait for the page to load. So that would definitely be my recommendation as well, is try the embed to start, see how it performs, and then try and incorporate in a different email to a different audience. Let's see if we use the link instead.
Awesome. Thank you both, and thank you everyone for joining. That wraps up all our questions.
That is awesome. So all of our Northerners stay warm and enjoy that warm weather down there. Anna, thank you all, and follow us on Instagram if you want to watch some of our future webinars. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.